I don't make the rules, but nevertheless, make no mistake about it. Male pretty privilege exists. And look, don't shoot the messenger. At the end of the day, it's an observation. It's something I've seen. It's something I've experienced in the flesh. Okay? The reality is, we can cope as all hell and say, if you focus on getting breaded, right, as an unattractive man, then that becomes a great equalizer. But I will tell you this, and like I said, I've been unattractive, so I know what it is. As an attractive man, even if you don't have it all together, you will undoubtedly have more experience with women. There is no doubt in my mind that even despite the fact that I didn't have my finances in order, I was still able to experience the panoply of emotions with a bevy of women, right? A plethora of types of women globally, internationally, across different state lines. I mean, you name it, but I was running around and I was getting tail with really no career prospects to show for, right? Or emphasize on. So it wasn't like I could bank on my status. I didn't have the fancy cars. I didn't have the freshest clothes. I didn't really have much together in that regard, but I did, you know, I was considered attractive. And I'll tell you what, the interesting thing about the attraction part is what maybe if I'm being honest, right? Humble points here, but I would say that I am probably a bit above average. And so just with that, I was able to get pretty far, because I wasn't like the hottest dude on the planet. I wasn't drop dead gorgeous, but it was enough for me to stand out from the crowd. So if anything, what you want to be is you either want to be very ugly or above average, because the dudes that get stuck in the middle are rendered invisible. At least if you're ugly, you can kind of you can kind of coast on the fact that you're a busted little cutie, and you can kind of figure out a way to monetize that to some capacity, right? Use it for something. So if you're a little bit above average, right, like in my case, then you definitely can get a lot of experience with women. And this is the thing. I've been able to do a lot with that. I've taken women from other dudes. I've been around the girls that had boyfriends and still took them away. I've done a lot of horrible things in that regard, and they were in stable relationships, and you managed to shake that up, and you realize it's not because I had anything, right? At one point, one of the hottest girls I pulled, I was an Uber driver. I was basically a loser. I didn't have anything in order. And I was still able to pull. And you could say, well, how does that make sense? Maybe she thought I had a good heart. I don't know. Or there was other instances where I was just kind of like, I pulled up in a raggedy vehicle and, they give me the look. And then at the end of the night, they still want me to come over and stay the night. Things like that. And look, I'm not saying that to gloat. I'm just telling you, these are just the facts. If you try to compare that to a little ugly goblin looking dude and he tries to do the same thing, he's not going to get those type of advances. He's not going to have those advantages. Even if he has the car and the status and the wealth, there's just something innately wrong with that equation, right? Where, like I said, there's something about it. Nature does reward that. And imagine, so let's take it even further. If you are an attractive man and then you get all these other things, right? You get the wealth, you get the status, you get the material objects, the shiny stuff that makes you look more than you are. You even have more of an advantage. But I would say for sure, being a broke guy that's attractive has way more advantages than the guy that's unattractive with tons of resources. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've been on both sides of it. And probably the worst place to be is unattractive and no access to resources. That's when you're really up against it. So, and like I said, look, I don't make the rules. This is just nature working itself out. And I know everybody says, well, this is why you have to try to maximize your beauty, maximize your looks as a guy. But at the same time, you definitely want to focus on allocating resources and focusing on the career path, because that is part of the beauty. But nevertheless, if you are an attractive man, you can kind of get away with it for a very long time before anybody starts asking any real questions about your resume or what you're trying to do with yourself, because a lot of girls will use you as a fun time temporary fixes, the side piece, if you will. You're looked at as the fun guy. Yes, you don't have it all in order, but the fact that you're a pretty face kind of gets you a long way. And like I said, I'm being very honest with myself, very transparent. I was a bit above average. I didn't, and I'm in a metropolitan city, one of the most competitive sexual marketplaces. And even then, I still managed to get through and had my share of dates and managed to get a lot of women's attention that I had no business even speaking to. And it was because I managed to get my foot in the door because of the charisma, maybe the nice smile, maybe the storytelling, maybe my ability to speak and convey. And so yes, the pretty face managed to get through a little bit, but then it was all the other things that I also had to offer that allowed me to stay, you know, part of the project for as long as I did. And look, there's no that perhaps that's not very sustainable, but it's a story in what? It's a story in that there is something to the idea that yes, an attractive man can still get very far in life and get access to opportunities just by that merit alone. I believe it's called the halo effect. But it's basically the idea that if you're good looking, then there's other good qualities about yourself as well, and people will present you with opportunities and want to help you and offer advice and coach you and things of that nature. So there is something to that idea. And like I said, and I'm not proud of it. I've taken women away from other little dudes, and I feel bad that I only did that because I could and because I wanted to kind of prove the experiment correct, which was that yes, perhaps this little ugly goblin had more resources than me and had more income and had his life in order. But me, just by the simple act of existing in a world that's full of uglies, unattractive men, that I was able to stand out and immediately perk her up, get her attention, have her frothing at the mouth. And I felt kind of bad, but then I was like, well, this is interesting because this is nature working itself out. This is despite the fact that, like, if she was going to use her logical brain, she would say, no, well, this is the better candidate. This little guy who perhaps isn't the most attractive man. This is the better option. This is the route I should take. No, instead she goes the loopy bad boy who has nothing in order but has beauty, and so they bank on that. And even though that goes against their self-interest in the long term, they would rather go through that heartbreak than the safety of a little chud, and that's just the reality. And like I said, I've had many experiences to back up that idea. And so it's just something that I've been able to observe in nature out here in the wild in these metropolitan streets. But anyhow, if it counts for something, I hope it helps, and I'll see you in the next one.